On Christmas Eve, a successful businessman finds two twin girls sleeping next to trash cans in the alley behind a diner. Furious, he confronts their mother, a young waitress who can barely make ends meet. But when she looks him in the eye and says, "You don't know even 1% of my story," everything changes. What began as a confrontation on the holiest night of the year transforms into something neither of them expected. A story of judgment, forgiveness, and a second chance that God prepared when they needed it most. You won't believe how this ends. So subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and comment on where you're watching from, and let's get to the story. It was Christmas Eve in Portland, Oregon, and the temperature had plummeted to about 2 degrees. That kind of skin-chilling cold, you know? Michael Harrison, 42, was returning home after a business dinner he'd barely managed to endure. Dark gray Hugo Boss suit, Rolex watch on his wrist, gray hair at the temples in that way that makes a man look more distinguished. On the outside, he was the picture of success. On the inside, he was just empty. It had been 2 years since the accident. 2 years since he had lost Sarah and little Joshua in the blink of an eye. A head-on collision on Highway 26, a drunk driver who crossed the road. Michael wasn't in the car that day. He had stayed behind to close an important deal. "There's always an important deal," Sarah had said before leaving with the boy. Those were her last words to him. Michael was cutting through a side street when he saw the diner. Joe's Diner. That kind of simple place that serves coffee and apple pie all day. He was about to walk right past it when something caught his eye in the alley next to the establishment. It was almost 11 o'clock at night, and in the middle of that freezing cold, he saw movement near the trash cans. 2 children, 2 identical little girls, no more than 6 years old, huddled together trying to keep warm. They wore jackets that were too thin for that weather, worn-out sneakers, and slept embraced as if they were one person. Dark brown hair fell over their little faces, their cheeks red with cold. Michael's heart stopped. For a second, he went back 2 years in time, saw Joshua, felt that pain that had never truly gone away. He ran to the girls. Hey girls, wake up!" He knelt on the cold floor, gently shaking their shoulders. "You can't sleep here. It's too cold." They both opened their eyes at the same time, in that disoriented way a child does when waking up suddenly. Huge, frightened brown eyes. "We're not going to do anything wrong, sir," one of them said quickly, her voice trembling with fear and cold. "We were just tired." "Where are your parents?" Michael asked, taking off his own coat and placing it over the two of them. "Where's your mother?" "Our mom is working in there," the other twin replied, pointing to the snack bar. "We just stepped out for a little while. She left you out here, in the cold, on Christmas Eve." Michael's voice came out louder than he intended. Anger rose, hot and fast. What kind of mother does this? What kind of person leaves 2 small children alone in the street, sleeping near the garbage as if they were worthless? He thought of Joshua. He thought of how Sarah protected that boy like a lioness. And that woman, that irresponsible mother, was in there, probably talking to someone, laughing, while her own daughters froze outside. "Stay here," he told the girls, his voice harsh. "I'm going to get your mother." Michael stormed into the diner. The place was almost empty. Just an elderly couple in a corner and a truck driver at the counter. Behind the counter, he saw a young woman, probably around 28, taking off her apron. Brown hair tied in a messy ponytail, yellow and white diner uniform, tired eyes that had already seen too much for her age. "Excuse me, we're closing now," she began to say, but Michael interrupted her. "You have 2 daughters?" he asked curtly. The woman froze. Her face changed instantly, from tired to terrified in less than a second. "My daughters? Have you seen my daughters? Where are they?" She was already running for the door, forgetting everything, her purse, her coat, the day's pay that was still in her apron pocket. They met in the alley. She saw the girls and fell to her knees in front of them, pulling them both into a hug so tight it seemed like she would never let go. "Emma? Lily? Are you all right? Oh my God, are you all right?" She kissed their faces, checked if they were hurt, cried and laughed at the same time. Mom looked everywhere for you in there, I thought. Oh my God. Sorry, Mom, one of the twins said softly. We were just very sleepy. So you're their mother, Michael said, and there was such coldness in his voice that the woman looked up, still kneeling on the floor. Yes, I am their mother, she replied, standing slowly and placing the girls behind her in a protective gesture. Why? Why? Michael stepped forward. Because your daughters were sleeping out here, in the cold, next to the garbage, on Christmas Eve. What kind of mother are you? What kind of person leaves small children alone like that? The woman was very quiet. There was something in her eyes, pain, anger, something Michael couldn't quite put his finger on. You don't know me, she said, her voice low but firm. You know nothing about me. You don't know even 1% of my story. So don't come here judging me as if you know anything. Michael opened his mouth to reply, but the words wouldn't come out. There was something in the way she spoke, in the way she stood there protecting her daughters, tired but not defeated. He saw her hands, red and cracked from washing dishes. He saw her worn uniform. He saw the way the girls clung to her, as if she were the only solid thing in their world. And suddenly Michael saw his own anger reflected in what she was, the pain of a father who had lost his son, projected onto a stranger he didn't know at all. You're right, he said after a long silence. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry. We got off on the wrong foot. He ran a hand through his hair, suddenly tired. Are you going home now? The woman gave a humorless laugh. No, we were going to a cheaper diner to buy something to eat. This will be our Christmas dinner. She looked at her daughters and tried to smile. But it's okay. We have each other, and that's what matters. Why not at home? Michael asked, more gently now. Because it's what I'm able to do, she replied, raising her chin proudly. And I don't have any family nearby. It's just the three of us. Michael stared at her, at the girls, at the cold, dark alley. And suddenly he remembered the table that had been set at his house. The small supper he had made more out of habit than desire. Turkey, potatoes, pie. Food for 4 cars, but he was going to eat alone, as always. Look, Michael said, surprised by his own words. I know we just met, and in the strangest way possible, but I made a small dinner at home, nothing fancy, but it's enough for 4 people easily. You don't want to come? The woman looked at him as if he were speaking another language. Are you inviting me to your house? We don't even know your name. Michael Harrison. He held out his hand. And I swear I'm not crazy. I just think nobody should spend Christmas alone, or eating whatever they want at a cheap diner. She shook his hand slowly, still wary. Amanda Torres, and these are Emma and Lily. Hi, Mr. Michael, they both said at the same time, in that shy, childlike way. That's how they ended up in Michael's car, a black Mercedes that Amanda stared at wide-eyed. The girl sat in the back seat, pointing at everything, marveling at the leather seats and interior lights. Mom, this car has a TV, Emma shouted, seeing the screen on the back of the seat. Michael's house was in West Hills, that neighborhood where every house looks like a postcard. When they parked in front, Amanda simply stopped walking. You live here? She asked, looking at the brightly lit 3-story house with its perfectly manicured garden. Yes, Michael said, suddenly a little embarrassed. I know it's too big for just one person. The girls ran ahead, exploring everything with that energy that only children have. Amanda stood still at the entrance, looking at the enormous hall, the marble staircase, the paintings on the walls. You're rich, she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. Yes, I have money, Michael admitted. I'm a businessman. I own a construction company. Harrison and Associates. Harrison and Associates, Amanda repeated, laughing a little. I've seen their commercials on TV. My God, I argued with a billionaire in a diner alley. I deserve it, Michael said, and for the first time in a long time, he truly smiled. Come on, let me show you where the kitchen is. When Amanda saw the table, she stopped again. The turkey was there, golden and perfect, along with mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, roasted vegetables, and pumpkin pie. Everything was beautifully arranged, with cloth napkins and crystal glasses. Why didn't you make a bigger dinner? Didn't you invite your family? She asked. But as soon as the words left her mouth, she saw his face change. She saw the pain pass through his eyes like a shadow. I was an only child, Michael said softly. My parents are deceased, and 2 years ago I lost my wife and son in a car accident. It was March 15th. A drunk driver. They died instantly. The silence that fell was heavy. Amanda put her hand to her mouth. Oh my God, Michael, I'm so sorry. I'm really sorry. That's why I reacted that way when I saw your daughters, he explained, his voice hoarse. Seeing them there, sleeping in the cold, it reminded me of my Joshua. It reminded me that I couldn't protect him when he needed me. And I transferred that to you. It was wrong. I'm sorry again. Amanda had tears in her eyes. I understand, and I apologize too. I never wanted my daughters to sleep outside. I thought they were sitting inside, waiting. When I saw they were gone, my heart almost stopped. Shall we eat? Michael suggested, clearing his throat. Before it gets cold. They sat down at the table, the girls on one side, Amanda and Michael on the other. The twins stared at the food with those big eyes, as if they had never seen anything like it before. May I say a prayer first? Michael asked. Amanda nodded, surprised. Of course. They held hands. Emma held Michael's hand on one side, Lily on the other, and Amanda completed the circle. Michael closed his eyes. Lord, thank you for this evening. Thank you for placing these 3 people in my path when I most needed to remember that there is still goodness in the world. Thank you for Amanda, who works hard for her daughters. Thank you for Emma and Lily, who brought light into this house for the first time in 2 years. Bless this meal and this new family that you have brought together here today. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen, Amanda whispered. And when she opened her eyes, tears were streaming down her face. Dinner was noisy in a good way. The girls ate and laughed, told stories, and asked questions about everything. Why does your painting have such a serious man in it? Does that staircase go to heaven? Do you have a swimming pool? Michael answered everything patiently, smiling in a way he had forgotten he was capable of. And Amanda stood there, watching her daughters happy, watching that man who had been so harsh in the alley now making funny voices to entertain 2 children he had just met. After dinner, the girls fell asleep on the living room sofa, snuggled up in a blanket Michael had given them. Amanda and Michael stayed on the back porch, hot coffee in hand, gazing at the illuminated garden. Thank you, Amanda said softly, for all of this. You didn't have to. I needed to, Michael replied, more than you can imagine. They were silent for a while, until Michael asked, Are you going to tell me your story now? That 1% that I don't know? Amanda gave a humorless laugh and took a sip of coffee. It's a sad story. Are you sure you want to hear it? I have. And then she told her story. He told her about growing up in a house where yelling was normal and love was rare, about his alcoholic father, his depressed mother, his older siblings who left as soon as they could and never looked back. She told him about getting pregnant at 17 by a boyfriend who promised her the world and disappeared as soon as he saw the 2 lines on the pregnancy test. Twins, she said, smiling despite her tears. When the doctor told me, I almost fainted. I barely knew how I was going to take care of 1 baby. Imagine 2. She talked about working 3 jobs while pregnant, about giving birth alone because her own mother refused to go to the hospital, about raising 2 girls alone from day 1, without help, without money, without anything but love and determination. But I didn't want to raise them in that environment, Amanda explained, her voice firm. I didn't want them to grow up seeing what I saw, hearing what I heard. So when they turned 4, I gathered every penny I had, bought 3 bus tickets, and we came here, to Portland. I didn't know anyone. I had nothing, but it was a fresh start, you know. Michael listened to every word, and his heart was breaking and piecing itself back together at the same time. He saw Sarah and Amanda, that strength, that maternal determination that would do anything for her children. He saw Joshua and the twins, that innocence, that ability to find joy in the simplest things. That's why today, Amanda continued, wiping away tears, that's why I had to take them to work today. I got this job at the diner 3 months ago. It pays little, but it's all I have. My babysitter canceled at the last minute because her family was going on a trip. I had no one to leave the girls with. If I didn't go to work, I would lose my job. And if I lost my job, she shook her head, we would end up on the street. My God, Amanda, Michael said, running a hand over his face. I was a complete idiot, judging you like that without knowing anything, without understanding what you're going through. You didn't know, she said, touching his arm gently. And I understand why you reacted that way. After losing a child, seeing any child in such a bad situation must be unbearable. They talked for hours. Michael spoke about his faith, about how after the accident he had drifted away from God for a while, about how Sarah had taken him to church for the first time, about how Joshua loved Sunday school, about how he eventually returned because he realized it was the only place where the pain made any sense. God has a plan, Michael said, looking at the starry sky. I didn't understand for a long time. I was so angry with him. But today I think I understand. He didn't bring me to that alley by chance, Amanda. He knew I needed you as much as you needed me. Amanda remained silent, processing. I was never really into church. My mother went when I was little, but it was more out of obligation than faith, you know? And after everything that happened, I kind of put God aside. He never abandoned you, Michael said, looking into her eyes. Look at you. Look at what you've accomplished on your own. Do you think it was all just your own strength? Amanda, God was always there, carrying you when you couldn't walk anymore. That night, when it was time to leave, Michael couldn't let them go. He couldn't imagine Amanda returning to the tiny apartment she had described, the girls sleeping on an old mattress on the floor. Look, he said somewhat awkwardly. I know this is going to sound crazy, but this house has 4 spare bedrooms. Wouldn't you like to stay? Just for a while, until you get more organized? Amanda looked at him as if he had gone mad. Michael, I can't accept this. You barely know me. I know enough, he said. I know a mother who would do anything for her daughters. I know a strong woman who doesn't give up even when everything seems impossible, and I have all this empty space. Amanda, please, let me help. And there was something in his eyes, something sincere, something good, that made Amanda say yes. The first few days were strange. Amanda would wake up early, make coffee, take the girls to school, and go to work. Michael would go to his office and run his business. They barely saw each other. But little by little, things started to change. Michael offered Amanda a better job, an administrative assistant at his construction company. It paid 3 times more than the diner, had benefits, and regular hours. She cried when he made the offer. Why are you doing all this? She asked, her voice breaking. Because it's the right thing to do, he replied. And because you brought life back to this house. You reminded me that it's still worth waking up in the morning. The following Sunday, Michael invited them to church. Amanda was nervous. It had been years since she'd set foot in a church. But when they went in, and the service began, something happened. The music, the pastor's words, the warm welcome they received. Amanda felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Emma and Lily loved church. They loved the other children, They loved the teachers, they loved the stories about Jesus. And Michael blossomed. He laughed more, talked more, lived more. Having those three people at home was like having color in a world that had been black and white for 2 years. They started having dinner together every night. Michael helped the girls with their homework. Amanda cooked recipes her grandmother had taught her. They watched movies on the couch, the twins squeezed between the two adults. They went to the park on weekends. They took short trips to the beach. And without realizing it, they became a family. It was on an April night, 6 months after that Christmas Eve, that Michael realized. He was on the balcony, the same one where they had talked that first night, and Amanda came to sit beside him. "Are the girls asleep?" he asked. "So tired of the park?" She smiled. "And they love it when you come with us." "I love it too," Michael said, and suddenly realized it was true. He realized that mornings had regained their meaning, that he smiled without forcing it, that for the first time in 2 years, he wasn't going to sleep thinking about everything he had lost, but about everything he had gained. "Amanda," he said, turning to her, "I need to tell you something." She became serious. "What?" I fell in love with you." The words came out before he could think straight. "I fell in love with you and the girls. You brought light back into my life. And I know it might seem soon. I know maybe you don't feel the same way. But I needed to say it because—" Amanda kissed him. It was a soft kiss, full of everything they hadn't yet said. When she pulled away, she was smiling with tears in her eyes. "I fell in love with you too," she whispered. "I was just afraid to say it. I was afraid of ruining everything we've built." They dated for a year of discovering each other, of building something solid, of letting the wounds of the past heal. Michael proposed to her on Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after they met in that alley. He knelt in front of her with Emma and Lily beside him, the three of them each holding a small box. When Amanda opened them, each contained a ring, an engagement ring for her, and 2 delicate rings with hearts for the girls. "Amanda Torres," Michael said, his voice filled with emotion, "will you marry me? And Emma, Lily, do you want me to be your real father?" All three said yes, crying. It was the easiest and most certain yes Amanda had ever given in her life. The wedding was simple, in the same church that had hosted them that first Sunday. Sarah would have approved, Michael thought. Sarah would have loved Amanda, would have loved the girls. And Joshua would have adored having 2 sisters. Michael officially adopted Emma and Lily 6 months after the wedding. When the judge banged the gavel and said, "These children are now legally your daughters," Michael cried like he hadn't cried since Sarah and Joshua's funeral. But these were different tears now. They were tears of gratitude, of new beginnings, of second chances that God gives when we least expect them. Life wasn't perfect. There were still bills to pay, arguments over silly things, difficult days. But now they faced everything together, as a family, like the purpose God had planned on that cold Christmas night, when a rich and well-dressed man found 2 little girls sleeping in an alley and decided to do the right thing. Today, when Michael looks back, he knows that nothing was a coincidence. God used his pain to open his heart. He used Amanda's struggle to show that true strength isn't about never falling. It's about getting up every time. And he used 2 little girls sleeping in the cold to remind him that family isn't just blood. It's choice. It's love. It's being there when it matters. If you're going through something difficult today, remember this. Sometimes God closes one door to open a whole gate. Sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another, much better one. If this story touched you, leave a like, comment what you thought, and subscribe to keep hearing stories like this.